Have you ever laid your head on the pillow at night but sleep just wouldn't come? Your mind racing with worries, regrets, and fears of tomorrow?
Yes, I can.
What if I told you that real peace isn't found in escaping your problems, but in reconciling with yourself and trusting the one who controls everything? If you're ready to break free from the chains of anxiety and finally find true peace, stay with me. There's definitely a connection between anxiety, worry, and a person's well-being, including their health, platelet count, and hormonal activity. That's why true peace and security come from inner tranquility, peace of mind, and complete trust in God. When we understand this, we realize that faith plays a huge role. It reminds me of the beautiful verse, "No disaster strikes upon the earth or among yourselves, except that it is in a register before we bring it into being. Indeed, that for Allah is easy." In order that you not despair over what has escaped you and not exult in pride over what He has given you. A believer who understands this verse will find peace because everything is already written and known by God. All we are asked to do is put in the effort and leave the results to Him. Our role is to work hard and do our best, but success and outcomes are in God's hands. The provision and results are already written. Of course, that doesn't mean we don't work. That would be negligence, not faith. True faith is to put in all our effort, exhaust all means, and then let go of worry, trusting that God will handle the rest. The outcome is not in our hands. Our part is to take action, but the results are purely divine. That's why people who truly trust and delegate matters to God are always at peace. They do their best. Then they can sleep peacefully at night, knowing they've done what they could. These are the people scholars call the people of surrender and adornment. Now, what does that mean? Surrender means letting go of the ego. No more saying, "I did this, I succeeded, I achieved." Instead, they say, "If I succeeded, it's purely by God's grace." They detach themselves from self-praise and attribute everything to God. Adornment is filling the heart with remembrance of God because, verily, in the remembrance of God do hearts find rest. These are the people of true peace and comfort. On the other hand, there are those like Qarun, Korah in biblical terms, who, when he became wealthy and powerful, attributed it all to his own knowledge and efforts, saying, "I was given this because of what I know." But God made the earth swallow him and his wealth because there is no such thing as, "I did it on my own." Knowledge, resources, and success are all gifts from God. Our role is just to take the steps, and God brings the results. When you follow this path of faith, you'll find rest. You do what you can, put in your best effort, and then sleep peacefully, not worrying. Anxiety comes from fear of the future. What if I fail? What if I lose? What if I get sick? But that's not your concern. You did your part. Now rest. And these are the people who understand the verse. And perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you. If something happens, they say, maybe if that hadn't happened, something worse would have. God always chooses the best. These people have inner clarity, peace with themselves, with others, and with God. But there's another type, the ones consumed by grudges, anxiety, and fear of tomorrow. They're constantly overthinking, imagining the worst, and letting negativity eat them up from the inside. These people neither sleep well nor enjoy their food. They suffer because of their inner turmoil. God describes the highest rank of inner peace as being among those who restrain their anger. That's good. But he says the better level is those who forgive others. Why? Because even if you restrain your anger, you still carry it inside, affecting your health and well-being. But when you truly forgive, you let it all go, and your heart is at peace. We ask God to make us among those who forgive because they sleep peacefully, with pure hearts, at peace with themselves, with others, and with God. This is the gateway to true health and success. And the reward? Not only do they live peacefully and healthily in this life, but God promises them forgiveness in the hereafter. As the verse says, "And let them pardon and overlook." Would you not like that Allah should forgive you? So it's a double win. You sleep well, free of grudges and worry, and you gain health and energy. Plus, in the hereafter, you earn God's forgiveness because you forgave others in this life. That's the true path to peace, health, and success in everything. Imagine a world where healing goes beyond science, beyond the limits of medicine, where the touch of a hand can cure the incurable. Is it possible? Let's explore the mysteries behind the healing touch that defies the very laws of nature and medicine. The healing touch is an ancient concept in history, the energy that emanates from the hands, along with its opposite energy, known as the energy of destruction or envy. These are natural talents and energies mentioned in the Quran, such as healing the blind and the leper by the permission of God. In tonight's session, we will talk about the topic of the healing touch. When medicine and doctors fail, when the surgeon's scalpel and the doctor's prescription cannot save a patient, the doctor may admit defeat and raise the white flag of surrender before death. In such a situation, the patient may look for alternative treatments, visiting herbalists, spiritual healers, or anyone with a spiritual belief. This is the time when the power of healing appears, as it may heal both the believer and the non-believer, as Allah provides sustenance to both. In this case, it becomes a kind of proof or test for the individual. We often hear of miraculous healing cases, and these are present in many cultures and communities across the world. These cases, called miracle healings, are real and undeniable, as they fall under the category of answering the prayer of the distressed. God answers the call of the distressed, no matter their religion, as long as they are sincere. A famous example of this is when a group of disbelievers in a storm at sea called upon God for help and were saved. Miracle healings or extraordinary cases are a result of calling out to God, regardless of the form or reason behind the call. We do not deny them, but there is also a possibility that charlatans and magicians can take advantage of this door. Spiritual healing practices that are promoted as surgical operations by spirits are nothing but pure deception, falsehood, and magic. On the other hand, many people claim to have the ability to perform healing with a touch, which is an ancient concept. The energy that emanates from the hand is similar to electric or magnetic energy. Even those who perform such touch-based healing talk about an aura surrounding the body. We have discussed before in an earlier episode about Kirlian photography and how it captures the electric energy emitted by the fingers. This is not a supernatural phenomenon, but a natural energy that exists within everyone and varies based on individual abilities. It's a type of suggestion that people who are open to it may experience, and studies have shown that there is an actual physical impact on the immune system after such sessions. For instance, studies showed a decrease in white blood cells, specifically in cells that regulate immunity, which indicates that the improvement in the patient's condition may be due to enhanced immune activity, even though this process is not fully understood. This shows that there is scientific credibility behind this natural energy, suggesting that it is indeed a talent, similar to having a beautiful voice or sharp vision. Historically, we know of Rasputin, the infamous Russian monk. His story began when the Tsarina's son was suffering from a fever, and she turned to Rasputin after hearing about his abilities. He placed his hand on the boy's head, and the fever immediately subsided. This marked the beginning of Rasputin's legend. Rasputin's powers were not supernatural. They were simply natural talents that can be found in some people, whether good or evil. These talents, or energies, are not linked to religion in any way. They are abilities similar to having beautiful hair or sharp eyesight, and can exist in both good and bad people. The same applies to the opposite energy, which is the destructive energy of envy and the evil eye that can harm others. This negative energy is present in some individuals, and it is harmful, unlike the positive healing energy. This energy can be understood by examining the fluctuating magnetic field which is used in certain therapies such as magnetotherapy, which speeds up bone healing and helps in wound recovery. Such treatments are parallel to the energy emitted by the hands during healing. One of the most well-known examples is that people with an optimistic outlook on life tend to heal faster than those who are depressed and pessimistic. This demonstrates that the energy around us can have an impact on physical healing. However, this natural energy is limited in its scope and is not sufficient to be considered a legitimate healing practice on its own. One of the most well-known examples is that people with an optimistic outlook on life tend to heal faster than those who are depressed and pessimistic. This demonstrates that the energy around us can have an impact on physical healing. However, this natural energy is limited in its scope and is not sufficient to be considered a legitimate healing practice on its own. The point I want to emphasize is that this natural energy should never be relied upon as a primary method of treatment. A person should always exhaust all available scientific medical options before considering alternative methods. It is acceptable to seek alternative treatments only after all conventional options have been exhausted. Many individuals claim to possess miraculous abilities, and it's essential to be cautious and skeptical, as most of these so-called healers are frauds. The majority of them are charlatans and sorcerers, with no real credentials, just words to claim they possess divine powers. Until a reliable method is found to measure this energy, just like we use voltmeters and ammeters to measure electricity, we should treat this subject with caution and avoid it becoming part of mainstream medicine. Until that time, this energy remains a subject of contemplation and curiosity, but not yet a legitimate method of treatment. That's all for today's discussion. Until next time, take care, and may peace be upon you. The Quran narrates the story of Dhul Qarnayn in Surah Al-Kahf, describing him as a great traveler who journeyed to the far west, the far east, and the far north. In the old Arabic maps drawn by ancient Muslim geographers like Al-Sharif al-Idrisi, Al-Qazwini, Ibn Hawqal, and Al-Mustawfi, they identified the location of Gog and Magog in the far north, in areas north of Siberia. Some of these maps are over 1,000 years old, and they are found in Atlas of the History of Islam by the great historian Dr. Hussein Monis. Dhul-Qarnayn's miracle, according to the Quran, is his ability to travel vast distances with extraordinary means and divine facilitation during times when there were no known means of transportation. And they ask you about Dhul-Qarnayn. Say, I shall recite to you something of his story. Indeed, we established him upon the earth, and we gave him to everything away. So he followed away. Quran 1883-85. This divine facilitation is the miracle of Dhul-Qarnayn granted by Allah. Every time I read the verses that describe his journey, I always stop at one specific verse and ponder over it deeply. Until, when he reached the rising place of the sun, he found it rising on a people for whom we had not made against it any shelter. Quran 1890. The shelter that is missing between them and the sun is the night. The verse speaks of a region where there is no cover from the sun, meaning it remains visible without setting, an area where the sun does not set for long periods. Could this be a reference to the far north, where the sun remains shining throughout the night without setting? This is the only place on the map where the sun, due to the nature of the location, has no cover. Perhaps this is why the ancient Muslim geographers placed Gog and Magog in the far north on their maps. Not just one map, all of them did this. The second question arises, why did the Quran call it the rising place of the sun, and not the east of the sun, while it referred to the west of the sun in the first verse? Until, when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it setting in a muddy spring. Quran 1886. It would be expected to say east of the sun, mirroring the west mentioned earlier. But it said rising place. This is because the visual experience is different. Here the sun is continuous, it does not set, and it gives the viewer the impression of its constant rise. It is not a matter of sunrise and sunset, but rather a fixed rising position. This supports the scientific understanding that Dhul-Qarnayn reached the polar sun, where there is a midnight sun with no shelter from it, because there is no night. This is merely an observation. But if we do not take this interpretation, the question remains, why did all the ancient Arab geographers place the location of Gog and Magog in the polar region in the far north? How did they know? The verses remain ambiguous and undefined in meaning. It is an opinion I feel comfortable with whenever I watch documentaries and see the sun without any natural cover. I think to myself, perhaps somewhere near this ever-shining sun, somewhere nearby, Gog and Magog are hidden in their cave or in their hiding place. I also remember the many discussions about the hollow earth theory, where many books have been written suggesting that the earth is hollow, with openings at the poles, inhabited and illuminated from the inside by radioactive rocks. Then there are the accounts of explorers who got lost and claimed to see small people emerging from the North Pole, from an opening there. Other explorers also spoke of seeing the stems of tropical trees and types of exotic flowers floating in the water in the Arctic region. How can this be? How could tropical plants be found in the Arctic unless they emerged from inside the earth? Perhaps Gog and Magog are inhabitants of the earth's core. No one knows. The verses about Gog and Magog remain one of the mysteries of the Quran, with many interpretations, most of which are based on Israelite traditions that cannot be relied upon. It remains unknown whether Gog and Magog are human beings or some other kind of creature. And of course, the diversity in the animal kingdom is astonishing. Anyone who watches Science and Faith and sees the amazing diversity in wildlife would understand that there are endless possibilities for what remains hidden and undiscovered. The other question is whether the verses about Gog and Magog are symbolic or literal. And why did the verses specifically mention that Dul-Qarnayn built the barrier with iron and copper, not just any ordinary materials? Bring me sheets of iron. Until, when he had leveled them between the two mountains, he said, blow. Until, when he made it like fire, he said, bring me, that I may pour over it molten copper. Quran 1896.